In this episode of Windows Games on Linux, I'm going over Path of Exile, how to set it up. And this was a kind of a long one. I've been working on this for about a month. So there's some really good content in this video, so stay tuned. So what all is in this video? First off, we will be using a custom Proton version in this. There's various tweaks among that as well. We're using a lot of variables for Proton to make this work. And then finally, there is some systemd tweaks that are optional. I do recommend doing them, as I did see a little bit of a performance bump by going ahead and upping some of the system cache and caching ability. So I'll go ahead and lay that out as well. Just know there's about 3 parts here, and then I have some sample gameplay with FPS counters, both in-game and also a native FPS counter as well. Okay, so jumping in here, Path of Exile, first I want to set up the capabilities of adding an extra Proton version. To do so, we need to go up to Steam in the top left corner and go down to Settings. And from the left menu, select Steam Play, and then from this screen, obviously this will probably already be checked. If it's not, go ahead and check it, and then check Enable Steam Play for all titles. So this will be here. There's one more setting though that you need to actually enable to be able to place Path of Exile on a custom Proton version. And that is on the account page. You need to actually opt in for the beta participation update. So you just come here, make sure this is select. By default, it will be on none. Just make sure you select this one, hit OK, restart. It will start a download, and then you'll be on the beta version. The reason why we need the beta update version is right here how it says this option. We will go into the properties here, and we'll actually be enabling this and getting this drop down later. Without beta, this whole section will be missing. So please note that. So with that done, let's go ahead and flip over and download our custom Proton version. Now, many of them exist, and it's important to note that the one going around the official Path of Exile forums is a different version. It's a Cacra version, and I don't particularly like this because it's not an independent one, and it requires you to overwrite certain Proton files and overwrite existing official Proton versions to get it to work. Again, not a very neat solution. That's why I really enjoy the Galleon 9 approach. This Galleon 9 edition, you can download and extract, and it's the entire Proton version to where you can just select it from the drop-down. That way, all your other games can play your official Proton versions, and then the Path of Exile will play on the Galleon 9 version. To download this version, it's important to note down at the bottom, it shows you how to install it locally. You need to install it right here in this path. So just know that how this Galleon 9 differs is it includes all this file structure, and that basically enables you to have the drop down and have Steam recognize it properly as a different Proton version. With that said, let's go ahead and go to the download page. So at the very top of this, and the link will be down in the description below, click on Releases, and then the top release here, Galleon 9, it'll be about 200 megs. And it kind of goes through the actual install process. If you want to read this, it's very important to note. The big thing here is one, making the directory right here. Now, this actual syntax did not work for me. However, I'm going to actually show you what I did. So I'm going to flip over to my file manager, and from here you'll actually see the .steam folder is basically what it does installs by default. And then I just click on this little shortcut link, and it takes me in the official Steam folder. Now this is the folder you actually need to install or make the directory for compatibility tools.d. So the instructions on their official webpage is a little misleading. It took me a little bit to figure this out, but just know you would just right click new folder and then name it this compatibility tools D. And then from in here, you could actually take your downloaded image of the Proton which that's just this guy up here. We just downloaded this tar file, and I did it before. So we'll just tab back, and we'll open up the tar file. This will take a little bit to open just because it is a lot of files, and it is a pretty big thing. This is an entire Proton version. And basically what we're going to do is take this entire thing, we just drag it and drop it over here. Now I'm not going to do that because I've already done that, and it creates this. Once this is done, you need to relaunch Steam. Now, before you do that, there's one more thing you need to do. So in here, you'll notice during the installation phase, it shows the extraction process. And then there's this other thing you need to do just to make sure you have the proper paths for this D3D adapter 9.so.1. You would basically just take this entire thing, right click, copy, and then just open up your terminal and you'd paste it in just like that. Now that looks like a bunch of gobbledygook, but trust me, when you hit enter, which I shouldn't probably do this, but I'm going to, and it'll say this. So that is officially adding this modular path into the system, which is what we want. So Galleon 9 is officially working and ready to go. From here, we still have some more settings we need to do. This is officially, now we relaunched Steam, so let's go ahead and pretend like we relaunched Steam. We closed it out, pulled it back up. Make sure you kill it completely from the task tray, not just close the window and reopen it. Otherwise, you may not see it. So once you've done this, we'll right-click on Path of Exile and hit Properties. Now, we're going to set the launch options. Now, don't add this Galleon HUD FPS. I'm just adding that for extra FPS counters for showing the sample gameplay. But the rest of this you will want. You want the %, and then all of this before it. So you want no D3, D11 equals 1. This basically makes sure that it doesn't run in DirectX 11. It forces it down to DX9. And then a space, and then you want Proton use Galleon 9 equals 1. And then Proton no GLSL equals 1 as well. And I'll put all this down in the description below, so make sure to copy paste that in there. It'll make your life a heck of a lot easier than trying to copy all that. So once those launch options are set, we check this, and from the drop-down menus, you will select your Galleon 9 extras. With this done, you will be able to launch into Path of Exile and play some games. So I am actually on an ultra-wide monitor, which has had a lot of issues in the past, and this took a long time to get going because of this next tweak that I'm about to show. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my widescreen monitor and show you the next tweak. So one more thing before we jump to the widescreen and do some tests. There's some systemd things I did change for caching because the caching in Path of Exile is just kind of poorly optimized in my opinion. Overwatch also suffers from this problem, so if you're an Overwatch player listening to this, note this probably will help you as well as far as performance goes. Now, there's a program or a file in systemd under the syscontrol.d folder in etc called 99-systemcontrol.conf. These are my current settings that I'm using. I highly recommend Googling and kind of understanding what each one of these options does. However, I don't think any harm will come from your system by just enabling what you see here. This is what I've personally been using for the last couple of weeks, and I have not noticed any issues. If anything, my system has been far more snappier, and just seeing a little bit of tweaks to my performance that have actually improved system-wide. So these are the systems that are be permanent on my system. However, I did notice I did get a good boost in performance in Path of Exile when using these systems or these settings in the systemctl.conf file in this directory. So that's just a short performance boost. You don't have to do this part. However, if you still see a lot of sluggish and slowdowns, you might try this, as I did do this. If it made a big impact, I'm not sure. I do know that it does make it feel a little bit better to me. But mileage will vary, and if you do make this change, please note you will need to reboot your system to see the effective changes. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into Path of Exile and play some games. Now, I have very heavy FPS counters, both in the left side using the Galleon built-in FPS, and then also I will have the Path of Exile built-in FPS and latency counters in here, so you can kind of see the performance as I go about noticing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and launch, but I will say this much about it. I did notice there's a little bit of, it seems like a spool up period of time. Like the first couple minutes, it seems like there's a little bit of stutter starts for me. But then everything is just gravy. And I can even alt tab and everything works, even on my ultra wide, where before it would just crash almost immediately. Also, to note, I don't know if this is just me, but it does seem like my load times have improved drastically from my Windows counterpart. So, I don't know if anybody else notices that using this tweaks, but man, it just seems far better. Alright, let's go ahead and go to our hideout here and run a map. Now, I haven't played this in a while, so I'm sure a lot of things have changed. But we're just going to run with my main guy. I'm sure he'll still do okay and just basic mapping. Alright, so far, a little FPS drop there. Go ahead and pull up Path of Exile's FPS. Alright. Alright, pretty easy map. I might run around just a little more, just to see if there's anything else in here. Oh, there's a good mob. There's a good density. That should get us something. About 20 FPS. Let's see. We can fill the whole screen. So about 30 FPS to 20 FPS. I mean, not fantastic, but it feels good to me. I'm not seeing any slowdown from that side. Alright, I think this is a pretty good test here, guys. I'm going to probably actually stop right here for this mapping. One more thing I wanted to show you is my actual options. So I'm not running any shadows for DX9. I am using the DX9 EX version. I do have multi-threading enabled. And the rest of everything, VSync I turned off. I noticed a good improvement with VSync off as well. So with that done, this is kind of what I'm looking at. I do have high water, high texture, so things do look rather good on the screen to me. But with that said, this is just the Path of Exile gameplay. So I'm gonna go ahead and quit out. Okay, so bonus time. Let's get an actual price checker for Path of Exile, because anybody that has traded anything on Path of Exile knows you have to have a price lookup, otherwise it's hard to play this game, especially do mapping. So with this, I use Xenon Trade. It's made for Linux and it works rather well. I've left the link down below that gets you to here where it's Xenon Trade, or you can actually look up here for the actual URL. Right now it's on 0.4.1 and you want the app image selection. Click this to download. Once it downloads, you'll have it in your downloads folder. Right click, properties, permissions, and make sure you check allow executing this file or program. Once that is done, just double click and then it will run the program. So we'll just go run and you'll get a desktop launcher or integration here. Now you want to integrate and run this program. This integrates it into your system, and then once that's done, you can just launch it from your start menu. So with that done, we can just type Xenon Trade and it will go ahead and launch. Now I have double monitors. I normally like to keep this program on my secondary monitor, but for this video, let's drag it down and I want to show you some of the settings here. First off, let's pull up the settings menu just by clicking on the little gear on the top left. I like to do a couple things. So first, I like to always focus because I like to just keep in my Path of Exile and have this on a second monitor. However, if you only have one monitor, you're going to probably be using Alt-Tab, so you don't want to always focus. So if you're using only a single monitor, make sure this is disabled. But I like to leave this enabled. For this video, though, I'm leaving it disabled. Change the league to your current league. This auto updates. Right now it's Betrayal. It may be something else months from now when you watch this video. Just know you come in here, select which league you want. I'm currently going to do a standard test because I don't have anybody on the Betrayal league. Next up is auto close. So this is a nice feature which I, like I said, leave it up on my other menu or my other monitor, but this actually just kind of takes away, as you're price checking things, it'll leave it up for 20 seconds and then go ahead and drop it off. So pretty cool all in all. So those are the things I like to enable. Is all these are off by default. I like to enable them just so you have a nice clean bar. So with that said, let's go ahead and throw that up there, and we're gonna just close these and launch into our Path of Exile. So we'll hit play here. Now, like I said, when it comes to this on Steam, you notice a little bit of this popping up when you first load up Path of Exile. So I like to give it about 30 seconds to a minute really to just cache all of the textures, but you can kind of see that happening over here. And after a few seconds here, you'll see it actually finish loading. So there we go. So let's go ahead and see, like I have an Aegis here, which is a pretty good item. Let's go ahead and Control C that. Let's Control C, Control C, and Control C. And from here, it pops in. This hitting the lock basically means it'll just click through and it won't go anywhere. And as you see, that timer kind of goes in and it slowly just drops these off. I still have to do the Alt-Tab. I haven't quite figured that out. You might be able to figure that out myself, but it's still not a bad way to actually check the price of many things out there right now. So I wanted to show this tool just because it's an invaluable thing, especially when you're on Path of Exile. So as you see, when I come back into Path of Exile, it disappears. Now, like I said, I have a second monitor, so I don't mind this so much. I just leave it up on my other screen. However, you might
play around with the settings, maybe download another program to put this on always on top, maybe not in focus with the lock on, and that way it could just sit up here and you can just get your feeds. But for this video, I just wanted to show this tool so you can actually do price checking in game without having to pull up a browser and all that business, and you can just go, hey, at a glance, that's how much this item is. Not quite as good as the PoE trade macro. I kind of like it a little bit better, and like the F5 to move directly to your hideout is also a very nice feature. But that is it for the trade macro. I just wanted to show that real fast just because it is a fantastic tool that we have on Linux.
So that was Path of Exile, the gameplay, the configuration, how to get it working on Linux. One of my favorite games of all time. Still play it every once in a great while. I do love it. It is a fantastic game. However, I did notice one thing that I want to kind of leave you with is they will be discontinuing DX9 and expanding on DX11. Now, some of us in the Linux community are a little worried this might break Path of Exile, and it probably will to some extent, but this isn't much of a fix what we're doing right now. This is kind of too hacky for my taste. And I think once they improve upon DX11 and we're able to use native Vulkan rather easily, I think it's going to be a lot more of a better experience for pretty much everybody involved. I think the setup time will be considerably less, if not just a install and play kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to this, not actually scared that much, because I think this big overwrite that they're doing to the graphics is long overdue, and I think it will be great. So don't worry too much about that. But with that said, tell me what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video.